Hello folks, and welcome to our game here on this Monday afternoon with myself, Shane Stapleton, and of course Michael Verney is always joining me there from the front seat of the good car. Michael, the internet wasn't working for you at home, so you're an industrious young man. You tipped out the road.
Well, we just moved into the house last Friday, Shane, and I was assured that this lovely 5G box that we got, I said, will it be able to do live streaming? Will live streaming be perfect? Oh, sir, it will be absolutely brilliant. Go to do live streaming this morning, absolutely useless. So someone's going to be getting a rocket in the afternoon. That's all I know.
You don't get called sir by too many, do you? That must be unusual.
you know, there is fair SH1 tea being talked when you're being called sir.
Yeah. How was your weekend? Did you watch much GA or were you just babysitting?
Yeah, no, bits and pieces. And Shane, word for the wise. Someone tipped me off on this. It's never babysitting when it's your own baby. It's only babysitting when you're babysitting someone else's. But there was plenty of parenting going on, and the Bowl Matt Connor was running yesterday, so I didn't see a whole lot of hurling yesterday. But he didn't deliver yesterday. I don't know, something was seriously amiss. So hopefully there'll be better days ahead for him. Yeah, but no, I saw plenty of bits and pieces. Just a quick thing, because we mightn't touch on it too much during the show, but it's great to see, like, we're of this variety now as well, but it's great to see the older gentlemen still striving at club level in particular, and particularly lads in their 40s. Like Donnacha O'Connor, top scorer for Duhallow twice in the last week. He's 42. The Eoin Kelly came up yesterday, and I just thought it was hilarious when he came up. He was obviously struggling. He picked up a knock or something, but his teammates nearly kind of gave him a guard of honour halfway up the field at one stage, and then wanted to kneel by his chaw at him. And I think Owen had his hand around his neck as well. But there was never any doubt about where the penalty was going to go, and he wrong-footed the keeper. But it's great to see boys of that age. Like Eoin Kelly's coaching inter-county. He's been doing it for the last maybe 3 or 4 years. But he still wants to do it at club for as long as humanly possible. And the likes of Donnacha O'Connor and many, many more. And we'll take plenty of your suggestions in there as well of other lads that are still doing it. But it's great to see.
I don't know if there are many players out there who both play the match and referee the match as much as Eoin Kelly does. Because it was gas. He had a little something to say to the umpires, to the linesmen, to everybody. So what happened that time when he got the guard of honour up, and I can't remember who was doing co-commentary, but I watched a lot of this, but he was talking, it was basically like Trump being surrounded by a load of agents on his way up to court or whatever. But so he was after getting dunted on his way up the field by Ben West, who got a red card, and Kelly was down for a couple of minutes, and then he went up and he shaped to shoot one way and buried into the bottom corner the other side. And
so just on that channel, so he was actually dunted before, on his way up or whatever.
On his way up, yeah. So he was probably around his own 65, and he took a fair old dunt from Ben West. Now, you couldn't see it on the footage, but obviously the linesman or whoever saw it. And Conor Heaney says, fair going for Eoin Kelly to be playing and reffing in one game at that age. So obviously Conor has the same idea as I do. Like, he's 41. Yeah. Like, he's some ball striker. And that's the sort of thing that we keep talking about, that'll add another 5 years onto your career if you want to go into the goal.
Unfortunately, I won't have that. I won't have that. You're still going strong, in fairness to you. But just on a point, I was on the field with him, and I would tell you that Brian Wheelan refereed games nearly till the end of his career. He did. It's just because... Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just because probably something to do with the stature in the game. By all accounts, a lot of lads would say Henry did the same down in Kilkenny too, and obviously Eoin Kelly is doing it and still doing somewhat in Tip. They will use every bit of an advantage they can get. That's what the great players always do. I remember playing Lusman a senior game. It was towards the end of John Try's days, and I went in and flicked, and I'm fairly sure I hit the ball, and all I heard was like that, and I saw John. He says, "Actually, you have to call for something," and of course he got a free. Like, it's mad, they do the real top class hurlers. They'll take every edge they can get, and Eoin Kelly's obviously still taking it.
So, Paul Curran was playing full back in front of him, and he still looks sprightly enough at 41 years of age. He's 42 in November. I wonder who's the oldest outfield player at senior level in the country at the moment. There's probably a
That's
few people out there who are, give or take 45 or whatever. Like, think of it this way. Paul Curran started playing for Tipperary in 2001. And here he is now in 2023, still playing senior club championship and playing very well from what I saw. Like, that's fair, I'll go.
It's fair go. I'd say Big Dan's not too far off. He's 45, isn't he? And he's
46 even.
retired and back again for Lismore. Fairly sure he's 45. He's played 30 seasons, I think, and he started when he was 15. Like, I know he was playing in goals, but it's amazing what Stephen Cluxton did in a senior All-Ireland final at 41. Like, that's amazing stuff, really. Like, to go and back do it at club level, and even, like, with due respect for lads to be doing it at, second team level or third team level, you'd stay going that bit longer. The pace isn't as high or whatever. But to be doing it at senior club level or senior county level is outstanding. Like, Tony Brown went just to 40 or 41 as well. That's savage. Like, you're a freak when you're able to do that.
Yeah, Dan Shannon's 46. Yeah, and he's 40.
There's some going.
Yeah, unreal. So get your comments in. Let us know who else is still an old soldier getting it done at the top level of sport. Do you want to start off with the Waterford Championship? I saw a nice bit of this as well. And I suppose just in terms of what the lineup for the semi-final is, Ballygunner are up against 4 Mile Water. And look, let's call a spade a spade. Ballygunner will be beating 4 Mile Water and they'll be back in the final. Winners of Delasal, Rowan Moore. Does that sound a bit dismissive, or is that just realistic? What are they, 55 wins in a row, 54 wins in a row in the championship?
Yeah, something like that. Listen, 4 Mile Water had a real struggle against Conor Prunty's club yesterday. Sorry, it just after escaping me there. Abbeyside, yeah. It's just escaped me there for a second. That was a real struggle. Like 15 points to 2-8. And I know there was chaos during the game and whatever. But like, you're going to have to be putting up a serious score to beat Ballygunner. They'll just routinely hit that 20-point mark at club level. I think Rowan Moore and Delasal is going to be the first game back in the newly reopened Walsh Park. And I know you saw that video and it was going around on the OurGame Twitter as well. It looks superb.
Yeah.
Like, it looks fantastic. And to be fair, the last couple of times I've been down there, the pitch was never really an issue. I always thought the surface was outstanding, but obviously it's all the other work that they have to do around it. But it looked outstanding. And I kind of said I do think Delasal, if there's going to be someone to take Ballygunner down, they're probably the most likely. But like, it was routine for Ballygunner, you'd have to say. Routine once again against Dungarvan. Patrick Curran ended up at 1-5, 3 points from frees and that, but they really just had them at arm's length, really, from an early stage, you'd have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching and looking at the team. It's just so ridiculously strong. And like, Eoin Kelly was back in the team. He'd been playing Premier Intermediate there up until recently, but he had to go off after about 15 minutes. So like, the last couple of years, we probably haven't seen quite as much of Eoin Kelly as people would want us to see. So I'm guessing it's just injury after injury for him. Patrick Fitzgerald just looked, like he's always presenting for the ball. He's winning frees. Now, he only scored 1 from play, but he looked good at times as well. Obviously, Desi Hutchinson is very hard to nail down. But to be fair to Dungarvan, they didn't allow Ballygunner in to score any goals. It finished 23 points to 11. And when I was watching the game, it was like 6 points to 3 to Ballygunner early enough. I don't know, inside the opening 15 minutes anyway. And Dungarvan had missed a couple of chances, and Kevin Mahoney was just causing them so much bother up at the other end of the field, because you know yourself the way Ballygunner move the ball up the pitch. They're just so precise. They're so composed on the ball. They don't just throw it up and lash it down the field ordinarily. And they were doing lovely crossfield ball for Kevin Mahoney. I think he had a point scored after about 10 seconds of the game. The next couple of balls that came into him, he was able to turn, fire over from different angles. And like, to be fair, for Dungarvan, how many, there's only so many firemen in any one team when you're coming up against Ballygunner. Ultimately, you're going to get picked apart eventually, and it's going to be the same in the semi-final and the final as well, it's kind of frustrating to say that, I'm sure, for a lot of people within Waterford, and even those of us who are watching from further afield. Like, I look at the Tipperary Championship now, and I couldn't tell you at all who's going to win the Tipperary Championship. A couple of weeks ago, I would have said, Killadangan, I think, might win it, and then maybe they will. And now you'd look at the way Thurles played against Borrisley, and it was on TG Carr yesterday, and you think, maybe Thurles are coming. Whereas last week and 2 weeks ago, I was thinking Thurles are at nut. You couldn't say it all. Now, whereas obviously Ballygunner will be an All-Ireland challenger, there might be no All-Ireland challenger out of Tipperary. So there's kind of like, there's the good and the bad of it as well. The same within Kilkenny. Outside of Ballyhale Shamrocks, is there any team in Kilkenny that you would say if they get out, they'll have a right crack at winning the All-Ireland. Maybe, but at the same time, you couldn't like overly confidently say it.
Yeah, no, the Tip Championship is probably like the Wexford Championship in a sense as well, where you couldn't confidently call a winner. It's very, very competitive, which is great, and there's going to be a lot of games tight, and you can't really predict who's going to win. Whereas on the flip side of it, in Waterford, like realistically, barring, we're going to have to be a couple of different kind of seismic things are going to probably have to happen for Ballygunner not to do 10 in a row. They have made themselves are such a well-oiled machine. As we were talking about on the Thursday show, it's like no player gets to go on a tour de force against them. They just don't get, you know what I mean? Someone playing centre forward or full forward or something like that, they're just not going to get a load of real good ball in space. They're just going to be surrounded. They're going to be kind of suffocated. And Patrick Curran obviously had his moments yesterday, but Ballygunner are kind of so process driven. Even I believe Harry Ruddle was playing that kind of Barry Nash role, cornerback, first receiver for a load of the puck outs and was carrying ball out the field. As you said earlier, they're not going to truck ball down. If the ball is going into Desi Hutchinson or Patrick Fitzgerald or Kevin Matney, who is back in the full forward line again, it's going to be lovely ball. It's going to be real sympathetic to the forward. And they put up a good score at their leisure yesterday. But on your question, what's a better championship? You'd have to say the championship where you control a blanket over 6 or 7 teams is the more enjoyable championship to watch. While with Ballygunner, you're just thinking, okay, when they play in a Piercing, that's going to be a cracker. If they play Ballyhale, that's going to be a cracker. But they're just a big fish in a pretty small pond at the moment anyway.
Yeah, and then I suppose looking at the other games from the weekend in Waterford, De La Salle beat Clonea 221 to 22 points. And Jack Toomey got a goal early in the game just to kind of set them off nicely. And I suppose they kicked on from there. The other games then, we kind of mentioned 4 Mile Water and Abbeyside. There was like a crazy opening quarter to this game. Michael O'Halloran, he was the first to be sent off early on for taking off James McGrath's helmet. I suppose that's a nice way of putting it, taking off his helmet.
You're just helping it off.
Willie Bursford then got sent off after a bit of a connection with the Forwards, we'll say, with Conor Gleeson. Pat Carney, the Abbeyside coach, he was sent off for doing a bit of mouthing at the ref. And then Conor Gleeson got 2 yellows in the space of 90 seconds. Abbeyside nearly stole it. Like, they moved Conor Prunty up to full forward. He won a penalty and scored a goal. Like, isn't that like the class thing about club? Because it's needs most, and you're putting, like, unlike a county team where you have 30 options and, you'll have, I don't know, maybe 12 options for the forwards, 12 options for the back, and whatever for the midfield as well. Here, you're like square pegs, round holes. We need a goal. We can't just bring someone off the bench that's going to be a threat. Okay, Prunty, move up the field there and let's see what happens. You just, like, and I'm sure you've had that with Burr over the years as well, where you're like, okay, we're going to have to move Brian Whelan upfield or, whoever. That these things sort of happen in a way that, it wouldn't really happen at county level so often.
Yeah, no, even like I remember like back in the day with Offaly, outside of the 98 All-Ireland final when he was sick, Brian Whelan was sent up full forward a couple of times in games when they were chasing games, which you just wouldn't see it now. Like a lot of I'd say a lot of people would say it smacks of desperation almost. It's like, oh, the manager's lost the plot and there's a couple of forwards sitting on the line. Why hasn't he brought them in? It's a bit of desperation or whatever. At club level, though, you're just doing whatever you can to try and get a result or get over the line or get competitive. I've seen it a couple of times. I remember Joe Brady for Kildare in 15, I think. Rhinus had them beaten all ends up in a county final. They were much the better team. He went up full forward, got a kind of a scuttery kind of a goal, and they won the county final. And that's all that's kind of remembered in the record books. But you still see it. You're not going to see it with Ballygunner, or you're not going to see it with Ballyhale, shall we say? But in lower end of club, even at senior level, you will still see it because you're just trying to do whatever you can. Put the big man up full forward, plant a few balls in there, and see what you can do.
Yeah, because there's very few sports that reward the long ball quite as much as GAA does. So, like, I remember the Senior B county final a couple of years ago. We were losing St. Finbarrs, and the manager was there on the sideline, and I just said to him, like, up full forward there, so I might catch something or whatever. And he thought about it for a minute, and then he said, yeah, go on up. And like but then a top level sport as well. I always remember with Chelsea when Mourinho was there the first time, he used to throw Robert Huth up front as well in games. Yeah. He's like the 6'4" defender from Germany or whatever. And just speaking of soccer, and I know you don't watch it that much, did you see Núñez getting those couple of late goals for Liverpool yesterday? That was unreal, to be fair.
I actually did. I was in the Pushing still on the way back getting a bit of grub from Naas yesterday, and the telly was behind me, but there was a lad going absolutely bonkers. And the half kind of Liverpool group that I'm in, because I went on a trip years ago, reckoned it was one of the best kind of steals in a long time. They reckon a draw was a steal, let alone a win being a steal.
Well, there were down 10 men, even
Yeah.
from early on in the game, so it was actually unreal to watch. To be fair to them.
Speaking of, like, seeing as we're gone into segues, how did you end up last night at that concert? Were you happy with the playlist? I know you were disappointed early on.
Yeah, so this is Noel Gallagher now. So I was tweeting, and people have certainly reacted to it. So I was giving out about Noel Gallagher playing all his new stuff. And fair enough, it's a tour for whatever his latest album is. But look, we don't, and I got a free ticket, but we don't pay good money to go and listen to some old new crack that you're after coming out with. Will you start pucking me out, Supersonic?
Yeah.
All the songs that I want from the early day Oasis albums or whatever. And he keeps.
I'd totally be the Same. I'd know all the old stuff. Just like, come on, I'm waiting for the old stuff. I'm waiting for the stuff I know here.
Like, exactly. Like, you don't go to, like, for example, Man United come to town. Oh, they're crap these days. But like, Man United come to town and you want to see the best players playing. You don't want the B-side sent out. You don't want to watch. Like, another thing that I think of there, do you know Cirque du Soleil? You know that thing?
Oh, yeah.
Those amazing shows. So I went to them a couple of times in Vegas, and they're unbelievable. Like, they're absolutely unbelievable. And then they came to Dublin, and the girl I was going out with at the time, we'd seen the one in Vegas. And then we said, oh, we'll go to this to be class again. They basically sent over the junior Bs. And they weren't able to do half the stuff at all. Like, and it was
it's funny you said. I sent the mother and the two sisters to it when it was in Dublin recently, and they loved it. But that's when you're not comparing it to what you've seen before. What was it? I saw a water show version of Cirque du Soleil in the Bellagio.
Yeah.
It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, where the stage just disappears, a different stage, and there's basic Olympic standard divers involved in it. It's amazing. If anyone has never been to it, I would recommend it highly. But as you say, go for the senior A one in Vegas, not the junior B one in Dublin.
Yeah, and that brings us lovely back to Rowan Moore against Mount Sion. But to be Rowan Moore true, like, we've already read the semi-final lineup. Gavin O'Brien, he scored 15 points, 13 of those were frees. Austin Gleeson, he scored 8 points. Bit of I suppose in some ways, a one-man band for Mount Sion. He was starting as the spare man at centre-back. Jeez, he just has such a range when he's striking the ball. Now, Mount Sion were playing into the wind in the first half. They were trying to work the ball out from the back, which you totally understand, but they kind of, Rowan Moore sat off the number 3, I think was it Luke O'Brien maybe, and forced him to be the one to carry it out rather than letting Ozzy getting on the ball and letting him strike from distance. But they were very much penned in from the first half. But to be fair to Mount Sion, they made a fair game of it. And in the second half, Ozzy scored a free from basically his own 21. He was trying to take it from about 25 yards out. There was a bit of jawing with the linesman. He was forced to take it back and knocked it over with the wind, of course, but more or less his own 21. We're gone to that stage now, scoring from the 21.
Yeah, sorry, that reminds me of something. Like I don't know if he gestured to the linesman or anything after, but I'm sure he might have had a word for him after or whatever. But back in the day, we were doing we did a sports day in school. I think it was second year, and one of the lads had a very unorthodox way of doing the high jump. And really unorthodox. It definitely wasn't Dick Fosbury's flop anyway. It was a completely different way of doing it. And one of the teachers came over and started giving out to him or whatever. And he jumped this incredible height doing his own style. And he just came over to the teacher and did the DX sucking thing to her after. It was one of the best things I've ever seen. 20 years later, it's still recounted in various WhatsApp groups. I can tell you that.
There, a friend of mine who played for Coola there for a while, Barry Connolly, so he's Joe Connolly's son. He was quite good at sidelines, and there was one match one day he was kind of lining up to take the sideline, and he'd sort of do the thing where he's kind of hunching a little bit before he's about to cut it. And whoever we were playing at the time started saying to him, "Jez, you have a lovely bum with lovely arse," or whatever, this kind of stuff. So they were trying to put him off. He cut the thing over the bar all the same and turned around and said, "I do have a lovely arse, don't I?" or something like that. But look, this is the kind of crack with it too.
But there's nothing better than, and I'd say Eoin Kelly got great satisfaction with that penalty as well. When lads are shawing at you, it's a great sign of a lad that they don't that doesn't affect them at all as well, that they're just able to go and do it. And that's a real kind of, I suppose, single-minded kind of attitude, or that they're just able to block everything out. But there's a great sense of satisfaction when you do something when somebody is riling you up beforehand.
Yeah, just back to that Mount Sion game, man, against Rowan Moore. Lee Flanagan had a great, like, young forward. I think it's his first year. He had a great goal chance early on, didn't catch it quite right. I think they had a couple of injuries, including PJ Fanning, so they wouldn't have been at full strength. And the goal for Rowan Moore, that came when the Mount Sion fullback, he was hooped and Shane Mackey blasted it to the net. Also in that championship as well. Actually, I think we've touched on all 4 games, but in the relegation.
Just on that, Shane, really, I'm surprised that Mount Sion weren't able to work the ball out better, because they had Gerard Cunningham of Newtown Chandram fame when they won the All-Ireland. They had Gerard Cunningham over them for maybe 4 or 5 years, definitely coaching them. And that was all they played, was the short ball, and they always went through the lines. So I don't think he's involved this year, but I'm surprised that they weren't able to adapt to that when Rowan Moore said, "Go on, you can have it." I thought they'd be able to play out a good bit better than they did. And as you said there were 2 relegation semi-finals as well. Passage had a good win over Lismore. It was 2-17 to 19 points. And Tallow, I think Tommy Ryan is still going strong with Tallow. It ended up 3-19, Dunhill 2-18. So Lismore and Dunhill are fighting for their lives there big time.
Yeah, and actually, Eoin Cadigan, he's coach in Dungarvan. And, at times they did some good stuff in that game against Ballygunner. But look, let's call a spade a spade. Most clubs in Ireland are overmatched when they come up against that team. They're just so strong in all positions. We'll move on to the Tipperary Championship. And look, so much happened over the weekend. So the top seeds that are through from the 4 groups: Drummond Inch, Lockmore, Toomevara, Killadangan. The teams that are second seeds going through: Mullinahone, Holy Cross, Roscrea and Thurles. So there's 2 preliminary quarterfinals, which will involve Nina and Clonoulty, who were they're going to be up against runners up as well. So you've got Nina against Clonoulty, against 2 of the runners up that we've mentioned there. And then in relegation, you're going to have JK Brackens, who they're getting that bit stronger now since Paddy Cadell came back. And as I mentioned to you last week, he didn't fully tear his cruciate, but he did do significant injury. But he's back and he's flying already, like both codes for Brackens. So they're on an upward trajectory based on what I've seen in recent times. Upperchurch are in there. Killerwan are in relegation, and obviously they're the current county champions. And Clonoulty, who are they've got a preliminary quarterfinal. So Clonoulty are both through to the preliminary quarterfinals and they're in relegation. That's the Tipperary Championship for you. That's what happens when you have the divisions as well.
I have a headache after what you're saying there. So they have a chance of still winning the championship and they're in relegation.
Yeah, but if they go on to win the championship, they're exempt from relegation.
But they have to win the championship to avoid the relegation.
No, so they can't be relegated if they go on to win the championship, but they're currently in the relegation battle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just in case there was any doubt about the madness that goes on in your flesh. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but this is all a legacy of having the 4 divisions. And of course, it couldn't just be north, south, north, south, north, south, east and west. It would have to be mid and west. So there is no East Championship in Tipperary. So everything is as clear as mud down there. But hey, we wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. Right, so just to go through some of the games, Moycarkey Burris, they beat Killerwan 123 to 121. And to be honest, Moycarkey Burris, they're unfortunate enough because they went out on score difference.
So are they just out, Shane? Are they just out?
They're just out. Yeah. If you finish third in your group, you're just out. So what was going on? I was watching the what was the other game that was on at the same time? It's just hard to keep track of all the games that were going on at the same time. So Toomevara were playing Roscrea at the same time. And late on in the game, so there had to be a 6-point swing for Moycarkey to get through, because if they won, they would have ended up on 3 points along with Roscrea, assuming Roscrea lost. But there had to be a 6-point swing in terms of scoring differential for Moycarkey to go through ahead of Roscrea, just to keep this nice and simple. But at one stage late in the game, Toomevara had a chance to get a point, which would have meant a 5-point swing. And if Moycarkey had to go on then and get another point themselves, it would have been absolutely level, and the 2 teams drew, so they would have been on the same scoring differential, so they probably would have had to play a playoff. So it's that tight. Like the Tipperary Championship at the moment, and you can say, fair enough, there's not too many teams there that win the All-Ireland, but it's brilliant. Like this 4 groups of 4, even if you want to go down to the second tier and the third tier, the games are just so even across the board. Like, would you find that an awfully? Are you happy with the amount of teams that are playing at senior level?
It's 10 now, which might be just a little bit too much. When it was 8, I think it was perfect and it was really cutthroat. But it's a lot better than the 16 it was. I'll put it to you that way. Most teams could beat other teams on a given day. We probably have too many, but that's still an awful lot better than it has been in the past. When you're looking at you're looking at most weekends now, and you're not saying X is going to be hammering or Y is going to be hammering. You're just saying, oh, that's going to be competitive. Whereas a couple of years ago, you could have number 1 ranked team playing number 16, and then you're like, and you know what I mean? And that doesn't make it appetizing to anyone. It's competitive now. It's ultra competitive in Tip. Like, imagine, say, Kilruane are gone from being county champions to potentially been relegated, which would be an unmitigated disaster, and there's no point in saying any different.
Yeah, but they're getting players back, and I know they lost to Moycarkey again, so they haven't been going well, but I imagine they'll have enough to eventually get out there. But like the 4 teams that are in relegation, I'll just read them out again. Clonoulty, where do I have the list? JK Brackens and
Upper Church, is it?
Upper Church, yeah.
Like, they're good teams.
In the county semi-final. They were close to the county semi-final last year. Do you know, actually, I think the Dublin Hurling Championship is currently 10 teams, down from 16 teams, which it was a couple of years ago. And there was definitely a lot of an appetite to change it and to kind of lessen the amount of teams there, because there were some hammerings. There was teams being beaten by 45 points, I remember. I actually think 12 would be the right balance there. Like, there's obviously a lot of clubs in Dublin. There's a huge amount of tiers. But then actually the Longford Football Championship, and I'll come to a crazy result that we saw at the weekend, but 12 out of the 21 clubs in Longford are operating at senior level. Like, when you can, so then when they go down to intermediate, the team that wins the intermediate tends to get absolutely hammered. So what we saw at the weekend was a 46-point defeat by Ballymahan, of course, of Maura Higgins fame from Love Island. Her team, Ballymahan, lost to Clongish 11-19 to 6 points.
Fair play to you for getting a Maura Higgins reference in somewhere there now. Fair play.
Any chance I can at all. But like Clongish, they hadn't even qualified for the quarterfinals, and they need to win their last game against Granard to be sure of going through. So that'll tell you it's not actually kind of, in terms of going form, the strongest team in the county championship. Now, maybe they'll win it, but they're not the strongest team in the county based on what we've seen in recent seasons. And they're winning by 46 points. And like last year, Killashee, who had won the intermediate, they went up, played one match, took an awful beating, and then conceded the rest of the games for the championship. So that would suggest that having 12 out of your 21 clubs all in the top tier is probably overkill, and it means that the gap is too big when a team comes up from intermediate.
Yeah, or would definitely suggest that anyway. Like, regards to like Offaly and Longford are similar type sizes. Like 8 to 10 is plenty at senior level, realistically. And you'd hope that if you tightened it up a small bit, that it would make the other championships more competitive too. Remember, we've had several conversations about the Dublin Hurling Championship, and it was, as you said, it was 16, and we were looking at these, eye-watering results, like, and a lot of games that weren't kind of good on the eye and wouldn't have much interest in them because you had a fair idea what way it was going to happen before you started. Whereas it's not like that now. It's much more competitive, and there are there's no turkey shoots anyway on paper or in reality, realistically.
Yeah, so I think for every county, the kind of challenge is to find that sweet spot number whereby you're making sure that the teams get enough games, but at the same time, you're making sure that there's no turkey shoots. And then when you have a dual county as well, there's even more to add in because you only have a certain amount of weeks. And if, for example, in Dublin, you have a team getting to an All-Ireland final, that's fewer weeks you have to run after your county championship. So it's not easy. We certainly wouldn't suggest it's easy. But Kilruane against Moycarkey, they're going pretty well. I mean, it's Eddie Brennan's first year with them. I'm sure he would have liked to have gotten out of the group ahead of the Ross Gray team that he was involved with last year. But that won't be the case anyway. Toomevara, they seem to be moving very well. Jack Delaney, he got 1-3. Josh McCarthy, he was good in defence. Kevin McCarthy was popping over points for sport in the forward line. So I was quite impressed with what I saw from Toomevara. And on Tipcast there recently, we had Gareth Toohey, who does a lot of the commentary on the games. He was saying that he doesn't see Toom winning it this year, but he could see him winning it soon enough. But because it's so open, you just couldn't call who's going to win it at this stage. Drum and Inch are a team that a lot of people are sweet enough on, if we can use your parlance from horse racing. And like this was a first win for JK Brackens this year, 324 to 216. Like, that's good old shooting there, especially against a team like Drum, who've beaten they've beaten Nina before this, and also Mullinahone. So,
was there an element of Drum already been through, and not necessarily not putting out their full complement or whatever, but just that the fact that they didn't have much to play for and they're still going to top the group anyway?
Yeah, probably. Probably is a bit of an element of that. But at the same time, you don't want to lose momentum. As a manager, you're certainly telling your team, look, let's go out and win this. But maybe to some degree as a player, do you sometimes sort of rest a little bit on your laurels when you know you're already through? Or would you find that, I mean, you're more of a workhorse type player. Either you're going to go out and work hard, or you're not going to give the team anything. So I'd say you have to have the same attitude every day anyway.
100%. I know you meant that as a dig or whatever, but it's 100% true. And if you're in any way off, you're in big bother. Whereas the classy lad can be a bit off, and he can still get a couple of balls thrown out to him and throw them over. I wonder, is there anything with Drum maybe making more of a go at the football this year as well, maybe?
Yeah.
Is that something maybe that's kind of going into it as well, maybe?
Yeah, there's a bit of that too. And Brackens are also a very good football club as well. 3 first half goals were important for them here. Dean McEnroe, he scored after 10 minutes. Shane Doyle got one, and Aidan McBride as well. So at half-time, they were up by 9 to 13 points, which means that Drum only got 5 scores in the second half. Their goals came from Seamus Callan hitting a penalty, and Tommy Nolan as well. Tommy Nolan's been having a great season so far, and he was on Tipperary underage teams that Liam Cahill was involved in. So, he's a decent size of a player. He's definitely got the hands. So he could be someone that gets a go with Liam Cahill later in the year whenever Tipperary get back training. ML89, this is obviously back to the championships again. He says, Loughrea and Thomas is the only county finalists of the last 7 years in Galway who haven't been down in Senior B in that time. Clarenbridge, Mellow, Gore, Turlockmore have all been or are in Senior B. So that's interesting. Nina and Mullinahone. 3 red cards in this game that all came late on for Nina. So again, you might be talking about Drum and say, look, they're already through. What did they have to play for in this game? And maybe they were a little bit off. Nina know that they have a preliminary quarter final. So maybe that kind of is a reason that they were a little bit off here. And they've had injuries in recent times. I think Mikey Heffernan's been injured. Certainly Jake Morris has been injured since he got that fractured jaw. So they weren't playing here. And watching this game, Mullinahone had, I think, 1-3 on the board very, very early in the game. And it just, Eoin O'Dwyer getting the goal there, it just never, I think he got the first one anyway, but he certainly got one of the two. But it just felt like Nina were off throughout the game. And then the red cards started to rack up. Tommy Heffernan got one for an off-the-ball incident. A ball was being delivered in, and then you could see in the pictures that there was a defender just down on the ground. Ben West got that red card for Dunton Eoin Kelly as he went up the field to score that penalty late on. So, yeah, it was Eoin O'Dwyer with the early goal. And then Keane O'Farrell for a chop on a defender or maybe a midfielder who was coming out with the ball in injury time. He also got a red card. So it actually means that Nina are going to be very, very stretched now, heading into the preliminary quarter-final. We don't know if Jake Morris is going to be right. Maybe he will be right, because I think it would be 6 or 7 weeks at that stage. So hopefully he'll be right. But how much hurling has he done? Yeah. So not having Tommy Heffernan, Ben West, Keane O'Farrell, you're digging fairly deep into your panel, and having won the North and looking like, geez, this is a team that's in right shape to win their first county championship since 1995. Well, maybe not.
Yeah, couple of bad results, a couple of big injuries. The North seems to have come at a bit of a cost to them as well. And all of a sudden they're digging pretty deep into the reserves going into a preliminary quarter final. It's going to be tough enough to kind of turn around, you'd have to say. One thing, you've seen a decent bit of him, Shane. I haven't seen too much of him. How's Barry Heffernan moving? Does he look back to something like himself again after the cruciate?
Well, I only saw bits and pieces of this match, so I didn't see enough to truly say. But he looked to be moving well. Yeah, and he was back at centre-back. So we've seen him in more recent times, like a couple of rounds ago against Drummond Inch. He was playing the half-forward line. I just don't think it's a position that suits him anyway. I think he's always someone you want facing the ball.
He's a carrier. He's a carrier to me. He carries ball. He's a brilliant carrier.
And a huge loss for Tipperary this past year after doing his cruciate last year. So I think he's only going to get better, and he's going to be in the next 4 or 5 years for him. He could be a huge player both for club and county. But yeah, so I thought he was pretty good. But from the Mullinahone side, Mikey O'Shea, he scored 4 points. Jack Shelley scored 4. I already mentioned Eoin O'Dwyer. He got 1-3. Eoin Kelly, of course, in the goals, but also refereeing from the goals as well. Kind of tongue-in-cheek saying that. But Mullinahone, they're moving nicely. Sean Curran, the centre-back as well. People might remember him from the county setup a couple of years ago. He was in there a few times. They're a nice, even enough sort of team as well. And will we move on to the next game, or are you happy with that?
Yeah, well, we've delayed the inevitable with Borsallee for a good while.
Yeah, look, let's call a spade a spade. It wasn't great from a Borsallee point of view. Thurles Sarsfields were very good, 220 to 111, and Borsallee got a very good start when Dan McCormack he got in for an early goal, but it was just complete takeover from Thurles from then on. I felt Dara Stapleton, he was excellent. He scored 6 points. He's the recent under-20 Tipperary captain. And I'd imagine he'll be parachuted into the senior setup very quickly, try and get him up to speed, size-wise, all that kind of stuff. But Borsallee always struggled. Conor Lanigan turned one of the Borsallee defenders very nicely early in the game and set up a goal for Paddy Creedon. He finished quite well, actually. Had to take a nice touch. Jody Harkin was coming straight out, but nice little finish there. I think Ronan Maher just got on too much ball. Just, Borsallee just really, really struggled. And I suppose the thing from Borsallee, people would say All-Ireland finalists just a couple of years ago, but the unfortunate truth of it is some of the players that were keyed in are, they're a couple of years older. Some of the lads who were coming through in the last 3 and 4 years who needed to take over the mantle haven't quite done that yet. So it's kind of leaving Burris in that. And there's a few lads who've got abroad as well. The likes of Niall Kenny, such a huge target man, he's not there. Kieran Maher, who people might remember scoring the goal against Ballygunner in that Munster final at the end of 2019, he's not there either. So for Borsallee, it started at an unfortunate position where there was a lovely little window where everything clicked nicely to get to that All-Ireland final. But now it really does need the younger lads to take over the mantle. But to be fair to Thurles, that's a great result. And when you look at how they played against Kildangan a couple of rounds ago, started out brilliantly, but they were completely pasted for the rest of the game, I felt. Like, they're looking good all of a sudden. And there's not too many teams who have the forward options they have. And Conor Stapleton was mostly in midfield, but even look beyond him, you've got Aidan McCormack. Dara Stapleton seemed to be far more, he was playing up the pitch. Stephen Cahill pitching in with points from midfield. Like, Paddy Creedon only got the goal, but he's there as well. So I think they can feel optimistic going ahead for the rest of the season.
It's a bit of a statement win, you'd have to say, and it's now is the time. Now is the time you want to start humming. Realistically, the first round is grand, and you want to get moving, I suppose, with a win. But now is when you want to start humming. You want to try. Like, it's the opposite of Nina. They're coming. Thurles are coming into form. They're relatively injury free, and they have a big result. And they're obviously after getting out of the group convincingly enough too. So, and as you say, Paddy's actually in charge, is he?
He's manager, yeah.
Busy man. Between the Tip, but he obviously hadn't had a night off between being involved with Tip as a coach, a selector, and being involved with Thurles. He's gone straight. He went straight from playing straight into management. Ray Galligan might give him a call, maybe actually, because he's doing the same, obviously, in Cavan. But fair play to him. The mantle was there to be taken on, and he's taken it on fairly strongly.
Well, the blow he had by being told that he had to retire instantly, and from club as well. You can imagine that this is a great thing. I think I've seen him do stuff like marathons and stuff like that, or maybe half marathons from his Instagram. But maybe this is one of those things that keep yourself busy and you don't dwell on the thing that kind of frustrates you. I'm sure he would have loved to play on for another. He could be one of those lads playing well into his 40s that we've talked about already. But how interesting is it that, he's a player who's played fullback loads of times over the years. That's where he was playing for Thurles at the very end of his career. That he now has Dennis Maher playing full back. What do you make of that?
Yeah,
you wouldn't have seen it coming.
No, it's not something I would have seen coming. He was really good a couple of years ago, full forward, wasn't he? And he called back in. He was called back in with Tip on the back of it. Yeah, listen, the thing is, and I think Richard Hogan had a comment in there, switching lads, particularly from forwards to the backs, that at club level can have a a really freshening kind of a thing. When when a new manager comes in, you kind of sometimes you need to do that. Obviously, Owen O'Donnell's operating at full forward for a while as well, so that's kind of something different that maybe he hadn't have been doing. It can kind of re-energize the team. It's not like County where you generally play the same lads in the same positions for their whole career. At club level, you can go from I played cornerback for years, ended up centre forward for a couple of years, and it's just a different focal point for the team, and maybe a different focus for me or whatever. But it can regularly happen that lads are moving from one end of the field to the other. But it wouldn't have been one that it would have. It definitely Dennis Matter back to full back wouldn't have been one that I predicted. I put it that way.
Yeah, and to be honest, when I saw him centre back a few games ago when Ronan Maher was out against Kildangan, I wasn't much impressed by that performance. But there were down players as well. But he was very, very solid against Burris-Lee. Now, Burris-Lee were disappointing, so how will he go there if he's got a bigger challenge against a team with a livelier forward line? Like, he's a good player, so there's a fair chance he'd be able to respond. The other game in that group then, Kildangan, they ensured that they qualify with a 25-17 win over Clonoulty Rossmore. It's only, 5 years ago since Clonoulty won the county title as well. Dan O'Mara, 3 points here. Sean Hayes, 3. Billy Seymour, he scored 3. And so not brilliant for Clonoulty, but they're in that relegation battle now. At the same time, they have a preliminary quarter-final. So, things are both looking up and looking down for Clonoulty at the same
Literally.
Yeah. Holy Cross, they were beaten by Templederry. I'm not sure too many people would have seen this one coming. So 127-123. Sean Ryan, he was excellent for Templederry there. They had a 15-8 lead at half-time. And that was kind of, like, from what I saw a nice bit of this game. Kyle Barrett was wearing number 2 but playing centre forward. We're just talking about that exact thing of you being the corner forward and moving up to centre forward. He was doing that. Now, he's had some really good games, but he was in a position where he had a couple of shots just before half-time. This game was on in Burris-Lee, playing down the hill, where generally you'd really fancy yourself down the hill into the scoring goals there at Burris-Lee. He had a couple of wides before half-time. He was then done for over carrying the ball when he was looking to win a free. And just Templederry got a bit of a run just before half-time. Now, to be fair to Holy Cross, they're still through. I think this group finished up with 3 teams on 2 points, and Holy Cross managed to get their way through just by a dint of scoring difference. But they've got Brian O'Mara at centre back. And, I've kind of, obviously Templederry won the game and all that, but geez, he was getting on so much ball. Can you imagine physically coming up against him at club level? Because he's just a fair old tank.
Well, it'd be tough going. I tell you what, obviously Barrett's happy enough to have him on his own team. But imagine, a converted cornerback ending up centre forward on this kind of beast of a lad. I always found that it was grand going up centre forward when you're marking an average enough kind of a centre back or something, a lad maybe that was a converted wing back or cornerback. But if you were marking, an out and out centre back or of county standard, he's played in that position all his life. You haven't played in this position for long at all, and it's just way more experience than you, way more know-how. Particularly, I always found, particularly under the high ball.
Yeah, for sure. So that's Holy Cross through, but also for Templederry. Shawnee Rhino I've mentioned, he played well. Colin Murray, Brian Stapleton, they were all excellent. And for Holy Cross, Darragh Woods, Barrett was very good, and O'Mara, who I've already mentioned. The final game then in Tipperary Senior, Lockmore beat Upperchurch 2-15-17 points there. Lee McGrath's goal after the break, that kind of ended things. John McGrath, he got a penalty after 22 minutes. That put them 1-7-4 ahead. Ed Connolly, he scored 4 from play. He was kind of best player for Lockmore. But also, Noel McGrath was good. Brian McGrath, Tommy Maher, Kieran McCormick. And Park Green hit 10 points for Upperchurch, 7 from place balls. And a couple of other lads who were prominent, Keith Ryan and Paul Shanahan. So
Kieran Connolly, Shane. Kieran Connolly. Is he playing away at the minute?
Do you know what? I didn't see any of this game, but I know he has been back. Like, he'd be a very important player. Like, he's had a lot of injuries already, and he'd be a very important player for Tipperary to bring through. Like, it's good for Ed Connolly. He did the cruciate last year he did the cruciate that he's back playing now? Maybe it was even the year before. I'm not entirely sure. But he's back playing well as well by the looks of it. Who would you predict to win the Tip Championship? I suppose, like everyone else, not a clue.
Well, I thought Kildangan would have added to the 2020 title by now, and it's getting worrying that they haven't from their point of view. I couldn't. I couldn't confidently. I probably would side with Kildangan, but listen, I thought Kildangan were going to beat Kilruane both times last year, and I thought they were going to win in 2021 too. So listen.
Yeah. Hey, Richard Hogan asking, how's the Whitehall project going, Shane? And then Adrian McGrath follows up, the Whitehall manager, a madman though. So
He
thanks for
speaks
that.
the truth.
You'd agree with that, you would.
Alright, sure. Listen, we're all a bit mad in our own way.
Well, to be involved in hurling, you have to be half mad, don't you?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. The Clare Championship then as well. Like, this was one of those things where people had the abacuses, the calculators, the whole lot out over the weekend.
Yeah, this is a mad one. There's obviously a rule change at Congress with regarding the head-to-head, and the Bridger after ending up out as a result of the head-to-head change. So rather than, my understanding of it is that rather than taking in your overall scoring difference, that it's the head-to-head from your meeting with that side.
Yeah, so
meeting with the side that you end up on.
Yeah, if three teams finish on the same amount of points, they're going to discard whatever happened against the fourth team, and it's just the scoring differential. Like generally, like in those situations, the head-to-head probably won't decide it because a couple of the teams might have taken points off each other, so the head-to-head won't allow you to decide it. So it'll then be the scoring differential only between those three teams, which I think is a really good way to do it because it forces you to give it your best in every single game.
I think it's a fair way of doing it, actually, to be honest with you. And I think it rewards probably consistency as well. Just say Drum in Tip had ended up in that scenario. They'd have no excuse for, we'll say, the big defeat that they took to Brackens. You know what I mean? It rewards consistency over games and games and games. There's big talk that the Bridge are going to lodge an appeal. Obviously, the Bridge were prolific enough champions up until last year. And now they're out. And now they're out and in a bit of bother.
Well, what would they be appealing on the basis of what?
They're appealing the rule change, I assume. Gracefield did something similar in Offaly in the Senior B Championship. That appeal was thrown out. I'm not sure exactly what you're appealing on, like, or that they weren't made aware of the rule change and that they didn't know of it. But I presume that, you know, any manager, any club that enters the championship, it's kind of your duty to know what the regulations are within that championship. So I don't think they have any excuse. The fact that Gracefield's appeal was thrown out in that Senior B football, where they'd actually topped the group and then all of a sudden they ended up third, even though they won at the weekend anyway, they beat Ballycumber. The fact that was thrown out has probably set a precedent, I imagine. And I imagine if there was an appeal, it would be thrown out pretty quickly too, because I don't really think they have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, we even talked about it last week that Holy Cross Ballycahill, they were lobbing in balls late on to try and, get a goal to beat Lockmore, but the scoreboard was wrong and they were only a point behind and they could have knocked it over the bar. The scoreboard was wrong. You need to know the situation yourself. Like I remember a league game earlier in the year, and you're asking the referee towards the end, what's the score? And it's kind of tough to get clarity because you think you're 2 points behind, you might be one, and sometimes it can just be sort of frantic situations towards the end of the game. But ultimately, if you don't know, you only have yourself to blame. So, I don't think the Bridge can have any sort of complaint with this. Adrian McGrath says, the Clare thing is straightforward. 2 teams head-to-head, 3 teams, a new table is created from the results in the games between the teams. Really fair for me. Tip's a bit mad anyway, Adrian, says Richard Hogan. So we'll just go through some of the results from the weekend. Clonlara, 22 points. Crusheen, 110. 6 Mile Bridge, 121. O'Callaghan Mills, 317.
The disappointing thing from the Bridge as well, Shane, is that they had this game in their hands. They were 4 up, I think, with 4 to play, and the Mills got a couple of goals late, and that's probably the really sickening part of it. Sorry.
Yeah. So running through some of the other results then, Cratloe, 13 points. Clooney Quinn, 5-12. Peter Duggan got 2-6 there. That's a very comprehensive scoreline. 2018 All-Star he is, of course. And speaking of All-Stars, 2013 All-Star Podge Collins, I don't think he played, but Conor Ryan was back for his first championship outing in 7 years. People will have remembered him, of course. He was brilliant.
It's great to see, isn't it? Great to see, because he really cut down in his prime. If you were looking back at 2013, you're thinking, here's a player that Clare could probably build their whole defence around potentially for the guts of a decade. And unfortunately, he was cut down. But great to see him back. I think he was in the States up until recently. Great to see him back playing a bit of club again.
Yeah, it was some sort of a blood issue, wasn't it? A blood disorder or
Yeah,
something.
I think so, something like that, where he basically seemed to kind of rob him of all his energy and that type of thing. He'd no energy or anything like that. But good to see him and getting to line out with his brother Dermot as well, who I'm sure he's watching. He's watching intently every time he lines out for Clare. But great to see them line out together at club level. I think he came on
Yeah.
in the latter stages of the game.
Yeah, I think the horse had bolted in terms of the result at that stage, but apparently he did well when he came on, which is great to hear. Aero Guinness, they beat Clare Castle 4-15 to 16 points. David Reedy, he came in with 112 in that game. So I don't think there was ever really much of a doubt on that. There was 2-3 on the board, I think, in the opening 10 minutes. Shane O'Donnell, he got a goal for himself as well. Fecal, 115. Broadford, 110. So Fecal are top of the group now at this stage. Oisin O'Connor got the goal. Kilmaley, 116. Ina Kilnamona, 322. So that was
little too late, unfortunately, for Ina Kilnamona. They're out now. They've saved a really good performance to last, but it's too late now. I think Dave Fitzgerald got a goal at one stage in the first half, and this is a real commanding performance. But I'd say they'll be scratching their heads, wondering why it took them so long to get going, because it's just, unfortunately, it's too late now for a team that was in a county final 2 years ago to be out at this early stage. Like, if you think about it, it's not that long since Clare were beating Michael Kenny in an All-Ireland semi-final, and now you're finished club before the end of August. You know what I mean? You were hoping you were going to be playing on the biggest day of the county season at the end of July, and now your club season is over at the end of August. It's fairly sharp, and I'm sure to be fairly disappointed given the talent they have on show in Ina Kilnamona.
Yeah, so Ballier, they drew with Scariff 19 points apiece. So Scariff, Ballier and Kilmaley, they're all still in the running ahead of the final round of group games in 2 weeks' time. Apparently this was a very entertaining game. Ballier chasing 3 in a row, didn't have Tony Kelly here, and they looked to be on the way out when they were down by 13-5 at the break, but they battled all the way back. Mark Rogers, he scored 14 points for Scariff, but they were reeled in eventually. Niall Deasy, he scored 7 points, and Keane Kirby, he got the equalising point in the 4th minute of injury time. A result like that can really be the making of a team in a certain season.
Big time, particularly if they know that Tony Kelly's going to be back maybe the next day. I think they have to get a result against Kilmaley. I think even a draw might do Kilmaley to put Ballier out. So that's obviously a massive game. Like, I was at the county final 2 years ago when they were obviously down Tony Kelly as well, and they were able to just grind Ina Kilnamona down despite being down. Like, they're down the two Brennans, I think, at the moment, and Pierce Lillis as well is away, I think, and they still managed to find a way. It's a great sign of a team, a great sign of a club as well, that they're able to pull it out of the bag when things are looking in trouble. And if they probably incrementally got a bit better as the championship has gone on, if they improve another 5 or 10% and they get their ace man back for the next day, you would fancy them to go through. But it's really interesting. Like, you look at the semi-finalists last year in Clare, Cratloe are gone, the Bridge are gone, Ballier are teetering, and Éire Óg, in fairness, are true and all. But it's I think someone was saying to me, if Ballier are knocked out, I think there are only a handful of lads in Newmarket and Fergus still playing from their last county final win. That would be all that would be in the championship, left in the championship, that would have a Clare Senior Hurling Championship medal in their back pocket. That would be all that's left. That would be unheard of. But you would still fancy Ballier probably just about to find a way if Kelly is back.
Yeah, and Newmarket and Fergus beat Wolftones 3-16 to 18 points there. Shane Lynch, Éanna Crimmins and Colin Ryan, they got the goals there, the 7-point win. So with Clare, I mean, if Ballier get through, you wouldn't back against them winning, even though they have had personnel issues with injuries this year. But surely Éire Óg, they're going to make a burst at some stage here. Like,
you'd imagine
anything
so,
with Shane O'Donnell and David Reedy.
You'd imagine so. Just Hugh Paddy's after clarifying it there, actually, as well. Sorry, Ballier have their 4 games played. They lost heavily to Kilmaley the first day out. So they're relying on a result, a certain Kilmaley result, to stay in the championship, which is really, like, that's so ropey when you're on that ground. I remember when we were minors, we were relying on Rhinus to beat Belmont in a final group game. We all went out to it. It's the day of the leaving cert results. And we thought they were kind of half going to throw the game, like, because we'd be big rivals. In fairness, they didn't. Rhinus won, and we ended up beating Rhinus in the county final after. But it can go, it can easily go one of two ways. Ballier could be out of the championship, or they could squeak in and they could go on a run.
So which time that you were doing the leaving cert was this?
I was waiting for that. It was the first one. The first time.
The first of three. By the way,
First of three.
You've kind of said, we've talked about Ina Kilnamona being out of contention. They're going to face St. Joseph's in a fortnight's time. And then the losers will enter the relegation series. So there's plenty still to play for there. In the football side of things, Effie Fitzgerald, he's stepping down as the Waterford senior and under-20 football manager. He's kind of turned down the option of a third year there. But do you reckon it's just the case that, okay, maybe there's any amount of reasons why he's not taking it up, but to some degree, where in a county where you'd imagine not the best footballers are even lining out, that there's some lads who aren't even accepting the call, and I'm sure we see this in plenty of counties across the board, that it must just be frustrating because you're like, well, how far can I really take this team? It's not like, let's say with the county hurling team, the best in a hurling county, the best players are always going to tog out nearly always. Whereas if you're going for the code that's on the hind hit, we'll say, you might end up with third string, fourth string sort of players as well, because we know Waterford previously have had trouble getting the best footballers to line out.
Is it the most difficult football inter-county job out there? I tell you, it's not far off it. It's not the most appetizing job. As you say, you're not going to have a lot of the best personnel available to you. Even though Peter Leahy, that was coach, he stepped aside as well, obviously, and he complimented, the players that they had involved and that they bought into what they were selling. But I think it's only one competitive win from their last 14. I think they beat London in the league game. They were obviously ran tip close in the championship this year, but yeah, it's a tough gig, and like you wouldn't envy county board officials trying to fill that vacancy and seeing what type of caliber you're going to have available to you, because as you say there, how much are you going to be able to improve? It's not going to be simple. I know Stephen Poacher said, and he got a bit of flack for it, saying that Waterford would have been better off with one of the Tailteann Cup games, just not filling the fixture and saving 8 or 10 grand or whatever it was. That's like, there's probably a bit of an apathy towards football in the county, and that would be probably, you probably see that in the quality maybe that they've been able to get in, or the quality they've been unable to get in. But it's a difficult gig, you'd have to say, one of the most difficult out there.
Yeah, Kevin McLaughlin has retired from Mayo. Of course, he's back-to-back county title winner with Knockmore a couple of years ago. He's been in All-Ireland finals in 6 different years, won 8 Connacht titles, I should say, as well. Only Aidan O'Shea and Andy Moran have made more appearances in a Mayo jersey than him. I always remember first when he really came to prominence for me was 2011. He made his debut a couple of years ago, before that in 2009. But when he scored that cracking goal against Cork, who were All-Ireland champions at the time, as Mayo dethroned them. And wasn't there a run of, it was certainly 3, if not 4 years in a row, when the Mayo team, where McLaughlin was so prominent, they dethroned the All-Ireland champions, but couldn't quite get over the line themselves.
Yeah, he was it was a sweet left foot. It was great that he went in a couple of runs with Knockmore towards the tail end of his career as well. But when push came to shove and Mayo were playing a big game in Croke Park, no matter what had come before it that year, Kevin McLaughlin invariably played, just because you knew what he was going to deliver. I think he saved them from relegation one year with a score in recent enough year. Yeah, that could have been it, actually. Yeah, that was it. That was it, yeah. It's obviously hugely disappointing for lads like that they're stepping away without the ultimate, the ultimate glory that you set out for. But he's had a phenomenal career. As you say, when you look at in numbers there, only Aidan O'Shea and Andy Moran have surpassed him in terms of appearances. Like that's, and I think the real kind of the real test of a fella is, like, if you ask anybody in Mayo, they would wax lyrical about him. Do you know what I mean? And what he brings to the table, and what he's been able to do for well over a decade. A great career. Again, unfortunate that he finished it without the Holy Grail. That's him and Jason Doherty both gone now already. You wonder, will there be more names? Kind of, they held on for the first year of Kevin McStay's reign. Will there be more names maybe stepping aside over the next couple of months, as it kind of maybe go in a different direction over the next couple of years?
You see Aidan O'Shea staying on for another season or two? He's just gone 33.
Definitely. I would have said, obviously didn't have his best display against Dublin, but he was outstanding throughout the league, outstanding, and in some of the championship games as well. like if Mayo hadn't limped out the way they had, I'd say he probably would have been an all-star this year. I thought by far this year he had his biggest impact. Much maligned, obviously, but I thought he was utilised really, really well. Even the fact that McStay had him kicking frees from the right-hand side in attack shows that this is not like a stopgap or anything. We're looking at this for next year or two. Yeah, I know. I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't stay on. Very surprised. Because McStay has nailed his colours to the mast with him and said, we're giving you this responsibility. I'm sure he still has a big leadership role within the group as well. No, I'd be shocked if he stepped away. Shocked. Very, 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 very surprised.
And he was taking him for Brafey there last week on telly as well. I was watching him in that game. Meath footballer Keane McBride, he hasn't been offered a new contract by AFL club Essendon. And there's so he's going to leave the Melbourne side. But will he be back? Because that would be a huge boost for Colm O'Rourke and what he's trying to do in Meath. And imagine if they had Conor Nash as well. Like, what a good player he also is. So it's not like there isn't talent in Meath, but geez, being able to get it all at home. Like, imagine putting him midfield with Conor Gray next year, who's an absolute giant. What is he, 6'6", 6'7"?
Yeah. Like, it's funny. When a county like Meath that, obviously they won the Tailteann Cup, but they hadn't been going particularly well before that. And for the last couple of years, they've been, some good performances, but maybe more bad than good. Every year, I'm sure in the off season, you're thinking, and it's a conversation in pubs locally in Meath or in Offaly or in Tip, wherever they have someone in the AFL. I wonder, would we be able to get him back? And as part of people, and this is the way Ireland works and the way the GA works, is that some people will be delighted that Keane McBride hasn't been offered a contract. And that's just, you know what I mean? Because they're only thinking about their own county. I'm not, it's a bit tongue in cheek there. But if he were to come back, like, he'd be a massive, massive boost. Look at, obviously, he's not in this bracket or close to it, but look at what Conor Glass has done for Derry since he came back. Look what Conor McKenna did for Tyrone for the brief spell when he came back. And he actually, he hit the 100 cap mark there recently in AFL. He's had a whale of a time since he went back for the second time over to AFL. He's had the 20 or so games he's played, he's probably been better than in the previous 75 or so that he played. But it would be a big boost for Meath. But saying that, like, if you look at someone like Dara Joyce, he's still over in Australia. They find, you can find another way. You might have to drop back a grade, like dropping back to the championship from the Premier League or whatever. You might just have to drop back a grade and, rebuild your career somewhat or go to another club or whatever. But if he were to come back to Meath, it would be a massive boost. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So going through some of the results in the Dublin Football Championship, Ballyboden beat. Actually, sorry, I go a different order. Kilmacud Crokes, they beat Castleknock 4-11 to 114. Bernard Flynn, who people will remember, of course, from Meath, we had him on the show not so long ago. It seems he's part of the backroom team now for Kilmacud Crokes. I think he knows Robbie Brennan, their manager, from prior days. But Robbie lives in Dunboyne as well. He's been living there for years, I think. But Robbie was actually involved with Bernard Flynn's ticket for the under-20s. Remember, they stepped away after a while, but Robbie was involved with that, so he's obviously maybe returning the favour, or Bernard is returning the favour to him or whatever. Obviously, Bernard is hugely knowledgeable football, man. They might be just looking at something a little bit different maybe in the backroom team this year. Yeah, the other game in that group, St. Sylvester's, they lost to Skerry Harps, 113 to 112. Stephen Smith with one of the goals there. Ballyboden St. Enda's 117 to 113 victory over Ballantyre St. John's, and Ballymun had a 1-9 to 7 points win over Temple Oak Sing Street. So for Ballyboden, Donica Carey, he got a goal there early on. For Ballantyre, Warren Egan cancelled that one out. The other game that I'd mentioned there, Brian Ashton, he got that goal for Ballymun. Nafina beat Whitehall Columkill. The damage was done in the first half with Conor McHugh getting a 13-minute goal. And then David Lacey, he got a couple. Also in that group, St. Jude's beat Vincent's. Both teams had come into the game off the back of a win. 4-11 to 11 points there. Vincent's went down to 14 men. But Alex Hassett, he got a goal after the 4th minute. 3 points from Pat Spillane were important. Liam Connaughton, you might remember him playing for Longford a few years ago. He got another goal here. He palmed one to the net. And Sean Lamb, he was dismissed in the 54th minute. And there was further goals then by Kevin McManaman and Connaughton with a penalty later on. I don't know. There aren't too many clubs out there who have as many sort of imports as St. Jude's, and that's no pop at them at all. like it's great. Like if you're a manager there and you're thinking, geez, I can get Liam Connerton, I can get Pat Spillane, I can get. They previously had that full forward from Killarney. What was his name?
Dave Mannix. Yeah. He went back to Stacks, I think.
Yeah. So like, I mean, it's what a boost when you can bring in players like this as well, who you know are going to add something. But geez, they've always had quite a few of them.
It's funny. Fogs and Judes are right beside each other, but there seem to be, obviously you went to Coola, you booked that trend, but there seem to be the countryman's club when they go up to Dublin. Like, you know, Borough Borough and Offaly would have had a rich enough kind of link with Fogs down through the years, and now it just seems to be Judes. If anyone from the country is coming up, it seems to be Judes that they move to. Obviously, well, I'm not saying, but like Rob Henley's with Raheny now. Coola would have had a fair few imports down through the years, particularly on a hurling front as well. But Judes definitely have always had high enough numbers, no more so now than ever. Good to see Kevin McMenamin still going strong as well. He obviously probably wasn't talked about much, but his role within the Dublin senior football camp for the last couple of years as well. I don't know, is it like a kind of performance coach / psychologist type role or whatever, but again, another sign that they threw absolutely everything at it. Interesting as well that Dean Rock kind of has pulled the horns back in a small bit on the comments he made after the All-Ireland final about retiring, and saying that he maybe still thinks he could still offer something next year. Now, I still think he will go, but it's obviously Mannion has nailed his colours to the mast. Rock is a bit lukewarm now as well. Maybe we'll see the whole band back together again next year. Who knows?
I wonder who's the best guitarist involved in a backroom team. So Kevin McManaman, obviously very good musician. You know, Brendan Maher did a bit of serenading with the Offaly backroom team, or with the Offaly setup last year. I think Michael Dignan was referring to it one day when we had him on the show. Remember we were asking about it?
Yeah.
Who's the best musician that you know involved in GA?
Oh my God. He never did it when he was over us, but Brendan Bugler plays a mean accordion. He had it out. He had it in the dressing room in the Hogan stand after Clare won in 2013. The best musician, Jesus, yeah, you have me there.
Surely someone's got to get a comment in here and let us know.
I'm sure there's probably someone that I'm sure there's Luke Maloney from Bray plays in a band, I know, because he used to always be he plays with Bray and plays with Offaly as well, or not Offaly, with Wicklow. He used to be gigging on a Saturday night. It's not exactly the ideal preparation for a game on a Sunday morning, but he'd be one that would come to mind anyway.
Yeah, there has to be a few. Get your comments in and let us know, folks, because you definitely have some information that we don't. The other group then in the Dublin Football Championship, Group 3, Thomas Davis, they beat Raheny 110-19, and Coola had a win over Lucan Sarsfield 17 points to 12. So good on the lads there, if you don't mind me saying. Galway Senior Football Championship, St. James's 2-15, Navan and 9 points. Barna 2-5, Carla Strand 10. Toom Stars had a draw with St. Michael's 12 points to 2-6. Corfin beat Oughterard 13 points to 1-7. Mount Bellew and Dunmore McHale's, they drew 1-8 piece. That was one of the draws of the weekend, really, because Mount Bellew were champions a couple of years ago, and Dunmore only won the intermediate last year, and they were down 1-6 to 1-3 at the interval, but they got on top, and Colin Ryan got a late point there. Mike Cullen beat Milltown 2-14 to 1-9.
I watched you go by that channel, and Mike Cullen were like, it was dominant, like really, really dominant. And they've picked up Johnny Maloney, who would have been Offaly captain in 2022. Like, he's, to me now, and this probably won't happen, but he's definitely good enough to be a starter for the Galway senior footballers, let alone Mike Cullen. So that is a massive boost of a player. And I know Johnny well enough, Tullamore clubman initially, and he's a big loss from Tullamore, but he's the perfect person to come into a club. Like, he's a proper leader as well. And he will totally have bought into what's going on in Mike Cullen, I'm sure, as well. And he'd be a massive boost to him. So I would say, if anything, they're stronger than they were last year. With lads like him involved. And I think Desi Keneally was in pretty good form at the weekend too.
Yeah, and a downbeat on Spadale, 6-9 to 9 points. I mean, to score 15, get 15 different scores and 6 of them being goals is odd enough. Salt Hill knocked Nakara 4-9, Killeen 1-10 as well. Niall Bresnan of Westmeath, great musician.
That's a good one, in fairness. Don't know. Well, he was obviously involved with the Tipperary backroom team once, so that's kind of an in into the question that you asked, in fairness. Andrew Sullivan had up there Luke O'Connor, who plays with Offaly. Yeah, he'd be a very talented musician too. I used to teach him in school, actually. fine hurler. I'm sure there's some. I'm sure like
Remember him in
can't
Fennel
think
did
of.
DJing?
Yeah, John O'Loughlin from Laois did DJing as well. Coppers a couple of times. There was a fella involved. Oh, his name escapes me now. He was involved at Longford definitely for a year. Played in a band.
Todd
Giant,
Gill, Brave Giant.
Brave Giant. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of lads involved with counties. It's mad. All that type of thing is probably gone from county now. It's just nearly impossible to balance the two. The only time they get to play the squeeze box or break out the guitar or sing a few songs probably be at some sort of family function, or maybe after winning a medal or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, Danny O'Reilly of the Coronas played club football in Dublin. Is that Ballyboden, was it? I'm not entirely sure. Emil89 says Sean Flood from Wexford has a band too, still going on the music scene. Sean O'Sullivan says Dunhill looked set to be relegated from senior 2 years in a row, with Ballygunner's B team keeping them up by winning the intermediate again. Doubt they'll want to be senior given the results. And we were kind of saying last week, and apparently we have it on good authority anyway, that if Ballygunner do win the intermediate this year, that they will have two teams at senior next year. Wouldn't it actually be a disaster? Let's say they balanced out the two panels and put a few of the Mahanys on one team, and Patrick Fitzgerald on one team and Desi Hutchinson on the other. Would they actually be strong enough to have the two teams get to the county final?
Oh, what a question. It's like having, you have 35 lads at under 12 and you put in an A and a B team, but it's not an A and a B team. You mix two teams together. Ballygunner will be very strong. Yeah. Now that's some thumb in the eye to the likes of Roemore and De La Salle. And listen, this clip will probably be playing back, I'd say, over the next 2 days, or maybe before a county final. But they would be very strong. Like Harry Ruddle played intermediate all of last year. Jake Foley played intermediate all of last year. Eoin Kelly was playing intermediate up until recently as well. That's the type of strength and depth to have. Just another lad as well, talking about kind of owl fellas still doing it. Shane O'Sullivan to still be doing it in the position that he's doing it at wing back is some going, because he's gone from the Waterford scene 7 or 8 years at this stage and still performing to a hugely high level for Ballygunner. And he was one of their best probably when they won the All-Ireland final a couple of years ago as well, but he's still fighting the good fight.
Okay, so in the Offaly Football Championship, I'll read out the results here and you can sort of give us an overview on it. Shamrocks beat Clara 2-17-16. Ferban beat Brackna 3-15-7, so that was fairly comprehensive. Edenderry and Durrow, that was 1-11 to Edenderry, Durrow 2-7, so a 1 point win for Edenderry. What's the crack in Offaly at the moment?
Yeah, Shamrocks relegated Clara. That's Clara's second relegation in 4 years. And it'd be sickening enough for them because, prior to that, they'd been in a lot of county finals. They'd lost a lot of county finals and semi-finals to Road. I think Clara's actually one of the oldest clubs in the country, to the best of my knowledge. Definitely the oldest club in Offaly anyway. They'd be very disappointed with that. Shamrocks got Jack Bryant back from the States. Him and Nigel Dunn did an awful lot of damage. So Shamrocks stay up. Ferban comprehensively beat Brackna. That was a quarter final. I think two of their defenders went travelling even before that game. It was probably them getting to the knockout stages and even saving their bacon was probably an achievement in itself, but they lost 2 players even before that game. The writing was on the wall well before throwing even. I think Cottle Flynn got an early goal for Ferban. They're right in the mix. They won it in 19 and have delivered some great performances without maybe being able to put 2 or 3 games back to back and maybe beat that. I don't think they've beaten Road since they beat them in that 2019 final when Niall Mack was out with a concussion. They don't think the draw is made yet, but the 4 semi-finalists are Road, Tullamore, as I said, without Johnny Maloney, Edenderry, who scraped past Durrow, were in big trouble in that game. I think they were 2-7 to 6 points down, and then I think they scored 1-5 without reply. And Keane Farrell's freeze kept them in it by all accounts. I don't think the draw has been made for this. It might have been made for the semi-final, but they're the 4 semi-finalists anyway. At the moment, even though a lot of their lads are the wrong side of they're the wrong side of 35, let alone being the wrong side of 30, Road are probably still favourites because Johnny Maloney's gone from Tullamore. Niall Mack is still playing well. Adam McNamee's still going. He's second on the Offaly seen a football championship roll of honour ahead of every other club, bar his own club, with 13 county titles. They're probably still favourites going into the last 4, I'd imagine. But Fermanagh might cause a shock. Whether they can go and win it or not, I'm not sure. Maybe not with Eoin Kelly out with the cruciate, but they'll be right in the mix as well.
Sean O'Sullivan says, Shane O'Sullivan is my second cousin and went to De La Salle with me in my year. And 20 years later, he's still a show-off. It was never good to be compared to him since I can't hurl. He got away with murder. Porter Porter says, Brendan Quinn, former Armagh hurler, I think he released a country music album. Niall Patterson, ML89, says from Antrim, was the bass player in a few bands.
Go away. Did Richie Kavanagh play county, no?
Ain't fucking golf.
No, I doubt he did. He looked like a man that enjoyed the spud, but I just say when the boys were putting out all sorts of one there, Niall Patterson's band to be good crack now, I'd say somehow.
Isaac Dolan says, keep an eye on Tina Abbey Deniry in the Galway Intermediate with Matty Kenny at the helm.
Fairly decent manager to have at the helm at that level, I can tell you that.
Yeah, the home club there for him. We pretty much have everything covered here, just in football in Limerick as well. Newcastle West, they progressed directly to the last 4. They had a victory over Kildimo Palace Kenry. I'm assuming Kyle Hayes is playing there, and I'd imagine he's probably an unreal footballer.
He didn't play last year anyway. He definitely didn't play last year. You'd imagine John Kiley be trying to pull back, lads. Just a quick aside, Shane, as well, because I don't think it was out there. But by all accounts, Will O'Donoghue was in a boot at the minute and hasn't played for the
I saw on some of the Limerick lads' Instagram, they were all wearing old school retro type jerseys from different sports, doing a booze down in Kerry or somewhere.
It was Declan Hannon's stag in Dingle. But by all accounts, he picked up a serious enough injury about 10 minutes into the All-Ireland final and played the whole way to the end. And on the flip side of that, I was kind of surprised with Conor Fogarty going off, but he hasn't played for Aaron's Own yet. He broke a rib, I think, midway through the first half, and that was maybe one of the reasons I was surprised he was taken off, I have to say. But that's maybe a bit of a reasoning for it, or some sort of a justification for taking him off, because I thought he was harshly taken off that day.
Did you ever break a rib?
Never. Touch wood. There's no wood around me. Never, thank God. But by all accounts, one of the most painful darts you can get.
I broke one in the county final against Crokes in 2017. So I went in to hit a lad's shoulder, but I definitely connected with my side against him. And straight away I was like, oh, that sort of a feeling that you get. And it was a real sharp pain, but I thought it was grand. So finished out the match. The next couple of days, on the beer or whatever. So I didn't even notice it. But then on the training on the Tuesday, we were lining up against the ball walls, just do a bit of a warm-up. And I'm fairly sure it was Sean Brennan. He just kind of bumped in behind me, just queuing up, and just sort of bumped in behind me. And all of a sudden it was like hell. It was awful. But yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I was just going to say to you, we were able to do that anyway in the days after. There was no problem there. It's amazing. I've obviously never had that because I don't drink, but I always think it's amazing. Yeah. No, I always think it's amazing that injuries that are picked up in games, they really don't surface until the Wednesday or Thursday after, when the beer wears off and normal life resumes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it from the show today, is it?
Yeah. We'll start mixing some bits of county action in, maybe reviewing the year and bits from next Thursday onwards. Loads to look back on, but the club is the only gig in town at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Pádraig O'Malley asking what we make of Kevin McLaughlin retiring from intercounty football. We talked about that earlier. I suppose time waits for no man. He's 34, made his decision now, but a brilliant footballer he's been for Mayo over the years. That's it for the show anyway. Don't forget, we're brought to you by ourstore.ie, which is the home merchandise here on the show, and also email events@ourgame.ie if you either want a coaching clinic or us to run a club fundraiser for you. Thanks very much, Michael. Chat to you on Thursday.
Cheers, Shane.